speaking. So feel free, if you need to stop me for some reason, just yell it out. Okay, everybody got that? All right, let's do it. So tell you a little bit of background on intentioning. And I'm going to start with something that happened at the very beginning of 2020. I was hiking in beautiful Arizona winter. It was January, you know, it's just gorgeous. The sun was shining, a beautiful day. I was out hiking in the mountains, in the city. There are mountains within the city and beautiful trails. And I was hiking with a friend when all of a sudden I tripped on something, a little rock or something, and I fell. I had never broken a bone in my life. And I knew immediately that I had broken my wrist. I heard the snap. I felt the pain. I was very fortunate that a doctor was right behind me, hiking right behind me. This wonderful woman helped me up. She turned my hoodie into a sling. She walked me down to to where the hike starts. And my friend whisked me to the hospital, and I got fixed up. It was fine. But the thing that I reminded myself of was one of my all-time most used leadership aphorisms, which is, it's never the mountains that trip you up. It's always the pebbles in the road. And pretty soon there was a pebble in the road that stopped our entire lives as we knew it. Pretty soon we had a pandemic that literally just stopped everything. So I had been writing intentioning. I had been working on it for about a year. I had been interviewing women. I had an idea of how I was going to structure the book. And the idea was that I would weave my leadership intentioning tools, which I knew I was going to create, around the stories of women who exemplified those particular leadership intentioning tools. Well, the pandemic made me realize that I needed to write a slightly different book. My previous book, No Excuses, 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power, was a study of why women had not reached parity in leadership, even though we had opened doors, changed laws, seen a woman first almost everything. And I had really come to understand that while there were still big systemic issues that we had to deal with, there also were culturally learned ideas about power that were hampering women's own levels of intention and realizing what they were capable of. You'll see I never use the word empower, or empowering when I'm talking about women and leadership, because I came to believe that women actually already have the power. We already have the power. We don't always know it. We don't always understand it. I came to understand that the reason for that was that we have been socialized in a now outdated idea of power, which women have borne the brunt of for millennia, which is that power is power over us, or that resources are scarce and we have to fight each other for our little piece of it. And I found that once women could change that thinking from that oppressive idea of power over to the generative, innovative, creative idea of power as being the power to, that all of a sudden it was like the world opened up. And it relieved something inside. I can't even put a word to it. It just like it allowed some energy to flow in a new way. And women would say, oh yeah, I want that kind of that. I want that kind of power. I want to be able to make life better for myself, my family, my community, my world. I want to be able to have these higher levels of intention. And I really want to use what you have described as power, which is that power has no attributes of its own. It's what you make of it. You can build something with it, or you can break something apart. So let's build something with it. So I give you that as backdrop. And then I realized, after teaching women how to know and embrace their power in that way for 10 years with my organization, Take the Lead, I realized there's a next question. And the next question is, the power to what? What power to what? What are you going to use that power for once you know you have it? And that is a huge question. So I'm going to make a confession to you now, which is that I looked for the right word to name this book, and I couldn't find exactly what I was trying to say. So lesson number 1 here is make it up. I just made a word up, and I want it to be the dictionary word of the year this year, because I love this word, intentioning. I turned the word intention, which is a perfectly good noun, but it just sits there because it's a noun, into an active verb. Hence, I'm talking about intentioning. I'm talking about doing, not just thinking, not just ambition, not just wishing, not just dreaming. All of those are good and necessary and important. But if you don't put the action to it, it doesn't really mean anything. The humorist Will Rogers used to say, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. So that's the backdrop of how intentioning got named. And then as I was writing it and the pandemic happened, there were 2 pandemics. There was the pandemic of coronavirus, which stopped us short. There was also the pandemic of something that had always been in American culture, which was racial injustice, and it was finally bubbling to the top, and people were paying attention to it at last, for a very sad reason, after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. So I realized that I couldn't just tell these women's stories, as wonderful as they were. I needed to start stepping back and looking at the social context first. And so therefore, we talk about sex, power, pandemics, and how women will take the lead for everyone's good. And by the way, my editor said to me, "You sure you want to use the word sex? Might be a red flag for some people." And I'm like, yes, I do, because the way society defines us from a gender perspective is profound. And so, yeah, we're gonna talk about it from the moment of birth, from the moment that people start defining us based on our gender, which is based on whatever people perceive our sex to be. So that's the backdrop for how intentioning got started. I then structured it, and I'm telling you this in advance because I'm going to go through some pieces of the structure. I then structured it so that we start with a look at where we are now, both from the coronavirus pandemic perspective and the racial injustice perspective. And I looked at what was working and what wasn't working with diversity and inclusion programs. I present a framework for how leading like a woman is something that is helpful for everyone, male and female, and whatever gender, how we now know that those characteristics with which women have been socialized, while they may have been negative in the past, and sometimes they get laughed at, they have inculcated in us exactly the characteristics that are being found as most effective for leadership today. And that includes in the DEI space. So we'll kind of go through all of that as I talk you through the elements of the book. The women's stories are all in there. Each one then becomes one of the 9 leadership intentioning tools, which are very practical tools and tips that you can use immediately to help you in your work, and also in helping women and men and people of every race, gender, culture to function effectively within the organization. And so that starts the structure of the book. And then, because I am super practical, There are very explicit ways that you can implement those. There are ways that you can avoid what I call the power demons that may keep you from being able to implement those leadership intentioning tools. And we talk about how you can make a plan for yourself and actually identify, clarify what your biggest, highest intention is and achieve it. So that's the backdrop. I wanted to give you that framework before I get started, because I want to say we are in a season of disruption. We are in a season of rebirth, and the two have so much in common. I know that the pundits say that women have been, people of color have been set back by 10 years from the coronavirus pandemic. But I believe that in moments of disruption, those are the absolute best times when you can make big systemic change, when you can move forward faster. So from my perspective, I look at that bright side of this disruption and see it as opportunity we have never had and we will never have again. Yes, the pandemic has exacerbated disparities, but yes, this is also a moment of opportunity because people are paying attention to issues of racial and gender justice. And these two are intimately intertwined. Racism, sexism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, all of these things are joined at the head. And we need to understand that and understand that those dynamics are always power dynamics, which is why I started out with that reference to how I have redefined power. And I also believe that men and women must lead together, but this is our moment. This is the time when we can lead the change. And there is a lot of unfinished business. You probably, I'm guessing more than most groups of people I have the opportunity to speak with, have you are probably a mile ahead on this issue, which is that first of all, there needs to be a culture of inclusion, and it starts there. And we all know that it's the right thing to do. And we all know that there's also a business case for it, as well as being the right thing to do. So why has it been so hard to make those major advances that we all want to have? Well, it does come down to understanding and deconstructing and reconstructing power in the manner in which I've described, from power over, which is oppressive, to power to, which is generative, understanding that there isn't a finite pie of resources, that the more there is, the more there is. We'll talk about that in the leadership intentioning tools. And that's the kind of leadership that is needed today. And that this is a time when we can step back. We can think about the fact that our institutions that we work in were designed by men, for men, who had women and people of color at home doing the work of the family and the farm and the household. And nobody lives that way anymore, for one thing. But there also is a good to just step back and think for a moment, what would our workplace be like if it had been designed by women in the first place? I mean, is having babies anything new in human history? I don't think so. It's kind of like something that's always happened. So I believe that we would have already addressed many of the issues that women feel so strongly about today, such as family leave and childcare and all of those kinds of things. And I think we would have made healthcare more available to people as a routine. But we also know that there are human capital benefits of addressing those issues. So again, we have to think about what is it that keeps us from doing it. It's about the fact that no one relinquishes power voluntarily. You have to figure out ways that help everybody see themselves in the story, whether it's the CEO or whether it's the entry-level person who is starting out at the very beginning of her or his career. There are in human capital benefits to addressing these issues in a whole different way that starts with an understanding of what power is and how we can redefine it and use it more effectively for all human beings to thrive. So I want to just share with you the stories behind the leadership intentioning tools, because while it may feel like I'm making a switch from the systemic to the individual, one of the basic principles from which I see the world as somebody who has been leading movements for most of my career is that there still needs to be, even when there are systemic issues that need to be dealt with, individuals also need to know that we have the power to make those systemic changes. Each of us can play a part in making those systemic changes. So that's why I have been built these leadership intentioning tools, which are useful to anyone sitting in any seat. Again, from the time you enter your enter the workforce to the time you may be the CEO or a board member or a team leader or whatever seat you're sitting in, because I'm going to tell you, I believe that a leader is somebody who gets stuff done. And therefore, everyone is a leader. Everyone needs to think of themselves as a leader, as somebody who can make the change that needs to be made. So I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the 9 leadership intentioning tools, and then I would love to take your questions. Does that sound okay? All right, let's do it. Okay, so the first leadership intentioning tool, which is number 1 because is where we all have to start. It is uncover yourself. Uncover yourself. Almost everybody covers themselves to some extent in the workforce. By that, I mean, and I'm sure you all know this principle, which is that people don't always show their whole selves for a lot of reasons. And if you are not the group of people in power, you are even more likely not to show yourself. Well, the fact is, if you think about who are the leaders you most admire, great leaders know themselves and show themselves. And I love Deborah Sterling's story because it's a story of a woman who was very creative. She started out as an artist, and then she went into engineering. She was at Stanford University, and she was in an engineering class. And she was one of, I think there were maybe 2 women in this large class. And she answered a question incorrectly. The professor humiliated her in front of the whole class and asked the whole class if they thought she should get a failing grade. She ran out of the class crying and was ready to leave her intention to get an engineering degree. And instead, what she did was she realized that she needed to really uncover herself. She needed to uncover what was inside of her. Her intention became that she wanted to do something that would help girls love the whole attributes of engineering. In other words, building, seeing how you could make something. So she invented and created a toy, an engineering toy, especially for girls, called Goldie Blocks. It is really cool. If you have girls in your life between, I don't know, I'd say like 5 and 12, you got to get them Goldie Blocks, because it really encourages girls to get that rush that they get from building things. And that was but she had to uncover herself. She had to not run away from what other people were thinking about her. She had to say, look, this is who I am. She also found that in her own leadership of the company that she was using a male model initially. And she had the same process to go, oh, no, I need to lead as I would authentically as a woman. And this is how I'm doing it. And she is just building Goldie Blocks into a huge company. Then once you've uncovered yourself, what is your big dream? Marina Arsenievich is a concert pianist who had to leave her native Serbia with 2 suitcases after she had done a concert where she brought together Muslims and Christians for the first time to try to bridge the gap that was happening in the country. It was a country at war at that time. And it made her so controversial that she had to leave. But she always saw that her dream was to be a concert pianist. And she, in fact, I saw her yesterday. She used the opportunity of the pandemic to literally change her way of working. She turned her home into a recording studio. She now has almost 1 million followers on social media, and she has become a major influencer with millions and millions of people seeing and hearing her music now every single day. So dream up. If your dreams aren't big enough that they scare you, they aren't big enough. Julia Pimsleur is an entrepreneur, and she now teaches other women about entrepreneurship. And this power leadership intentioning tool is Believe in the Infinite Pie. And this addresses that issue of people thinking that there is a finite pie. And if I take a piece of it, there's less for you. Well, actually, it's just the opposite. If I help you and you help me, we both have more. We are capable of making more pies. There's no limit to human intelligence. And once we can get over this idea that there is a finite pie, particularly of power, then that's when everybody can begin to see themselves in the story, and they can get rid of that fear of diversity and inclusion and what it might mean, that it might mean taking away their power. It doesn't take away their power. It gives everyone more power once we have opened it up and everyone sees themselves in the story. And, especially for women, I think we have to have everything perfectly buttoned up before we actually take a step. Well, that's not really true. So I find that Modulate Confidence is a very good leadership tool. It's leadership intentioning tool number 4, because if you wait until you're totally confident about everything, you'll never act. You'll never take an action. So modulate confidence. It's, confidence gives you a lack of confidence can give you a little bit of humility that you need. So that can be a good thing, but don't wait until you feel like you're 100% confident, or you'll never get there, ever. Tiffany Dufu, one of my dear, 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 dear friends, and she has, I'm old enough now that I can say this. She views me as a mentor, and I am so thrilled with what Tiffany has done, building her own company now, The Crew, and which is helping groups of women become cohorts that support each other and implement actually all of these leadership intentioning tools together. And this one is Strike Your Own Damn Balance. Tiffany wrote a book. Her first book was called, I don't know if she's written another book since then. It's called Drop the Ball. And basically what she's saying is, you set your own rules. There is a narrative that tries to tell women you can't have it all. Well, you can have all of what you want. You can have all of what you choose, and it's your choices. You decide. And at different points in your life, you may make different sets of choices about how much time you give to child care, how much time you give to elder care, how much time you give to your career. It's your life. It's your career. Once you own that and understand you get to strike your own balance, you don't worry about whether you can have it all. You have all of what you want. Selena Sue, build social capital first. I love this leadership intentioning tool. I'm going to tell you, I think this is the one that has enabled me to go from teen mom with no education to Head Start teacher to leading to the executive director of a small Planned Parenthood affiliate in West Texas, to building one of the biggest Planned Parenthood affiliates in the country in Arizona, to becoming the national president of Planned Parenthood, and then writing some best-selling books, and coming to you today, having the opportunity to come to you today to talk with you about the latest book that I have in the organization I have started called Take the Lead, because that's been the trajectory of my life. And I honestly believe that this leadership intentioning tool has been the most important. Build social capital first. It is the most important thing you will ever have. Your networks, your relationships, most everything happens in this world because of relationships. The world turns on human connections. Build them, track them, make sure you don't lose anybody from your virtual Rolodex. Be who you are and make those human connections, and don't be afraid. Again, I come back to uncover yourself, know yourself, and show yourself. Nobody can be you better than you can be you, as one of my heroines, Carla Harris, always says. Build social capital first, and then be unreasonable. I love this one too. I take it from George Bernard Shaw's comment that the reasonable person, he said man, of course, but I'm going to say person. The reasonable person adapts to the world. The unreasonable person expects the world to adapt to her. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable person. And this woman, Rupa Dash, envisions literally, I'm not kidding, she is totally out to change the world. She has what she calls her moonshot. And she is out to change big systems, everything from food to energy to, I mean, it's all there. She does it all. Minda Hart's leadership intentioning tool, turn implicit bias on its head, because you could make it into your superpowers. Minda decided that, Minda had experienced many of the issues of implicit bias that particularly women of color experience in the workplace. But instead of her letting it set her back, she instead has started a whole movement and has written now 2 or 3 books that help women of color know how to navigate, know how to succeed. She turned the implicit bias that she experienced on its head and turned it into her superpower to help now millions probably of other people and other women, and I'm guessing men as well, to be successful. Meghan Markle. I tell you, I wrote a piece about her after her wedding, and she has, Meghan and Harry have carved out an ethic of social justice as an abiding value through the use of symbols that started with their courtship and their marriage, and that continues in the media coverage of them today. I don't usually focus on people who are at such a celebrity level, but I just have to say that, symbols create meaning, and they've done that in an incredibly powerful way, because the first obligation of a leader is to create meaning for the people on their team, on their staff, in their organization. And if you can create meaning through the use of symbols, people will follow, people will understand what the mission is, and people will again be released to be themselves within that. And that is creating that culture of inclusion. We can't forget that we are working in a workplace with many generations, and that each generation has its own issues. And I particularly hear from young women, you've told me I could do everything, and now I feel like I have to do everything. Or you told me I could do anything, and now I feel like I have to do everything. I'm sorry, I muffed that just a little bit. But that's, we can't forget that we need to pay attention to what the needs and issues are of each of the genders within these different things. And we also need to remember, and I'm ending with this story because it's one of my all-time favorites. I believe that what you do is more than what you do. In other words, what you do for yourself, if you are helping to change a system, is more than what you've just done for yourself. It's not selfish. And this woman, Cindy Guerra Robbins, literally has created a whole movement toward pay equity. And she was the chief people person at Salesforce at the time. And she and another woman, and again, she joined, remember the infinite pie, and remember the build social capital. She and another woman joined together to present the case to the CEO that there was pay inequity between the genders. And they brought the facts, and he said, oh, we have to fix that. So essentially, they got this huge company, Salesforce, to do a study, which they're now doing every single year, to make sure that pay is equitable across race and across gender. So, it wasn't something that she set out to do, but it was something that she noticed, an injustice that she noticed, and she used the position and power that she had to be able to help make that happen. So, just quickly, I want to take some questions. Take the Lead is my nonprofit organization. We provide services of all kinds, virtually, in person, or blended. We customize everything, and for individuals and for companies. And we have lots of proof that our approach works. And it all starts with building that culture of inclusion. And we have many different ways that we can help do that. Many different endorsements of the work that we've done, and that's the end of my pitch. But I do want you to know that I hope you enjoy intentioning. I hope you will read it. I hope you will find it helpful to you. You can go to my website, gloriafeldt.com/intentioning, and you can download a free workbook if you like, that will actually take you through these leadership intentioning tools. If you want to get a signed book plate, just let me know. And if you want to put your face in the middle of this, you are welcome to do so. We will help you do it. And connect with me on social media. I'm at Gloria Feldt everywhere. I think I might have gone over my time, but I would love to.
So it's time to, the session's going to end, Gloria. It's going to end
automatically. What's that?
The session's going to end automatically.
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. You can reach me at, you can connect with me at Gloria Feldt anywhere. If you had questions that you wanted me to answer, just send me a direct message. I will be happy to communicate back with you. Thank you, all of you who are still here.